Here we are in Chapter 5, dealing with present indicative verbs, and I'd like to begin by looking here in the Gospel of Mark, Chapter 1, verse 37. I'll be reading from the Christian Standard Bible. They found him, that is, they found Jesus, and said, "Everyone's looking for you." And he said to them, "Let's go to the neighboring villages, so that I may preach there too. This is why I have come." Now you'll see I've highlighted in yellow here the verbs said, and you would assume they would be in past tense in Greek, just like they are here in English. We're in the midst of historical narrative, but when we actually look here in Mark 1:37, again, you don't know these verbs yet, or you don't know these conjugations, you don't know these endings. Legusin, that is a present tense verb, right? Present tense, though it's translated in the past here. Lege, that is a present tense verb, even though it's translated in the past. Why is that? Well, it's a reminder that present tense verbs in Greek don't just convey activity that's happening in the present. Remember, time is a little tiny element of the Greek verbal system. And one of the functions of different tenses is to function to communicate discourse markers. In other words, how the text is chunked up, how it's paragraphed. Because remember, the ancient way of writing, you had no spaces between words, everything was capital letters, no punctuation. So varying tenses was sometimes a way of communicating the beginning of a new section, the beginning of a new paragraph, and that's especially true with the present tense and historical narrative. The present tense, it's often called the historical present because it's used in historical narrative, and it's usually translated just as past tense. Sometimes it's called the narrative present. It's especially common with verbs of speech, ding, 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 or verbs of motion, like going from one place to another. And so it's frequently found at these seams in the text where a new person comes in and speaks, or they go to a new location, the place that we might begin a new paragraph in English. Yes, in this chapter we are dealing with the present indicative verbs. Present is the tense, right, which we remember in Greek. Time is a little bitty element of that, time. And the big element is the verbal aspect. That is the speaker's perspective. The speaker is presenting the action as unfolding or in progress or from within without attention. See, I'm bracketing off here. Without attention to the beginning and the ending. Just presenting it as unfolding without including in that the beginning and ending of the action. Indicative is the mood of the verb, right? This is the tense, present tense, although we're kind of hesitant about that word tense. Sometimes grammars want to call this the tense form to remind us that we're not necessarily talking about time, because tense is synonymous with time in English, and so there has been some movement to call that the tense form. The indicative, when we call a verb indicative, it means that the speaker is presenting it as a factual reality. Now we realize that people can lie, right? The devil can speak in the indicative mood, but the speaker is presenting, the speaker or writer is presenting that for digestion, mental digestion of their audience as a factual reality. And so that's the indicative mood, and that's what we're looking at. And we're going to look at both active voice and middle passive voice, and we'll review that as we go through it. So this is the present active indicative. So present tense, right? Progressive action. We're thinking probably in the present time frame, unless there's some other function there. It's indicative. It's being presented as a factual statement, and this is an active voice. That term there is describing the voice of the verb. In other words, the subject is doing the action. As we look at the translation, it's the I that's doing it, the you, the he, the we, the you. The subject of the verb is doing the action. The subject's not receiving the action. The subject's not doing the action to itself. The subject is just doing the action. Now, as we look here, the translation that's given is progressive. I am loosing, you are loosing, he is loosing, we are loosing, y'all are loosing, right? Southern English will do there. Y'all or you guys, y'all are loosing, you guys are loosing, they're loosing. And that's maybe an over-translation, but it's reminding us that the verbal aspect conveyed here is imperfective verbal aspect, right? It's the looking at the action, it's unfolding or in process from within without attention to the beginning and the ending, not including that in the presentation of the action. You could also just translate this: I loose, you loose, he looses, we loose, y'all loose, they loose. You could do that as well, right? But we're maybe over-translating here to remind beginning students about that progressivity. Now, in English, if I were to just translate this: I loose, you loose, he looses, we loose, y'all loose, they loose. You can see the only place this changes, right, is the third singular. But up here, this changes every time. And the reason, of course, we've already touched on this briefly, is the subject information, right? We touched on this in the overview in the last chapter. This subject information is squished into the verbal ending, so it's included in there. So we don't have to have the word I here, you, he. That information is included in the ending. Luo, that word by itself means I am loosing. Lues, you are loosing. Lue, he is loosing, or she is loosing, or it is loosing. Luamen, we are loosing. Lueta, you plural, y'all are loosing. You guys are loosing. Luusen, they are loosing. Someone is wondering, why are you using the verb meaning to loose? Because it sounds really strange. Because every beginning grammar uses the verb luo because it's short and regular. So that's why we are using the same verb that every I know of no beginning grammar that uses any other paradigm word other than luo, because it's very short and very regular. It's not an irregular verb. Now we can see these endings here, O, ace, a, and we have a wonderful song that you can sing these that we're providing to you, right? That's a great way to learn these. When I learned this, I just had to rote memorize it. Luo, luace, lue, luamen, lueta, luusen. But we have a song that sings all the active verb endings. It'd be a great way for you to learn it. People learn things differently, so you do what works for you. You can see with the way we're really dividing this up, we have the stem, lu, right? That's our verb stem. And then if we take our grammatical scalpel or our grammatical lightsaber and we slice every little piece out, it actually has three pieces here. We have the verb stem. We have a connecting vowel or variable vowel. It's called a variable vowel because sometimes it varies between epsilon and omicron. A connecting vowel or a variable vowel. And then we have the personal ending. Now, it's helpful to recognize this because later on, sometimes the variable vowel we'll see in other moods will be slightly different, and it'll be helpful to know that there really are three parts here and not two. However, oftentimes there will be combinations here, or something will lack and things will combine, and so we're really going to think about that as one unit to illustrate what I'm saying here. When it comes to the first person singular, more detail is given about this in the book. The first person singular, technically the stem is lu, plus then you have the omicron connecting vowel, plus you have no personal ending, so the omicron connecting vowel lengthens to luo. But the reality is you never see this historical process going on. So it's kind of confusing to memorize something you never see. You see it like this. And so most students, I found, while it's interesting to learn the historical morphology, they say, what does it look like? I want to learn the form as it actually occurs. This is it. And so you're really thinking about how you have a verb stem. I'm highlighting the verb stem now in green. And that yellow part that's left, yes, it is a combination of a connecting vowel and a personal ending, but kind of technically, we can just call that the personal ending because it really does communicate who is doing it. Is it an I, a you, or a he? Is it singular or plural? Right? It lets us know it's basically a personal ending with the connecting vowel added to the beginning of it. Now, you think about those endings, you could add those on to any other omega verb. For example, we have the verb akuo, right? Akuo. What's our verb stem? Well, it's aku. How'd you get it? You cut omega off, right? You cut the omega off, and that's your verb stem. Then you can write your verb stem down through here. Aku, right? Akuo means I hear. Aku, right? That's our verb stem. And then we can just slap on the same endings that we have up above here. Akuo, akues, akue, akuamen, akueta, and akuusen, right? And by the way, that final form there, that nu is a movable nu. It may be there. It may not be there. It does not affect meaning. the speaker or writer just thought sometimes it sounded good to have a new sound on the end there. It's optional. So sometimes words occur with it, sometimes they occur without it. It's not really very predictable as to when it will be there. How would this be translated? I hear, or I am hearing, you are hearing, he is hearing, we are hearing, you guys are hearing, they are hearing. Okay? All right, we also have to learn not just the present active, but we also need to learn the present middle passive. Right? This is, again, just reviewing present. That's the tense. Indicative is the mood. So it's present tense. It's progressive action, probably in the present time frame, but context will dictate that. It's indicative, meaning it's presented as a statement of fact by the speaker. But then who's doing the action? We just did the active voice where the subject is doing the action. I, we, you. That's where the subject is doing the action. What about where the subject is being acted upon? So let's first look at the passive, right? So you can see here the verb is built in a similar way. We have a stem, lu, 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 lu. And then, yes, it's built with a connecting vowel that sometimes combines and other things, but here you can see it in the first person plural very clearly, or in the second person plural. And then you have your personal ending. So really you have three parts, right? You have the stem, you have the connecting vowel, you have the personal ending. But we're really thinking about the connecting vowel and personal ending already combined as they appear up above. So that's oh my, a, notice the iota subscript, etai, amatha, estha, antai. We have a great little story we use sometimes to remember these endings. I say, imagine you're in this little country church and there's a little old lady who likes to keep her eyes on what the teenagers are wearing and how they push the boundaries of a proper attire. And she has trouble seeing. She's sitting in the back and she sees that teenager that's always wearing strange stuff come in. She says, oh my, right? We're going to use a little poetic license in our pronunciation here. Oh my. She has a little difficulty seeing, but she looks, she sees, a tie, right? So that's oh my, a tie. We'll post a video with this memory device as well. And then she looks, this is a Baptist church, and she's shocked to see a Methodist, right? A Methodist on the tie, right? A Methodist on the tie. Pardon me as my handwriting is having trouble keeping up with my speaking here. So, Amma the S, the on tie sounds a little bit like a Methodist on the tie. Again, this little old lady, she looks, she's like, oh my, hey, a tie, right? This teenager's wearing this gigantic tie. And when she looks closely, there's a picture of John Wesley on the tie. It's a Methodist on the tie. Oh my goodness, a Methodist on the tie in a Baptist church. How shocking and how scandalous. Silly little memory device using similar sounding words to help remember these endings. Again, we'll post a video with some dramatic presentation of that. Maybe that will help you. You can just memorize it. Luamai, lue, luatai, luamatha, luesta, luantai. Notice the translation here that's given is the passive. I am being loosed. You are being loosed. He is being loosed. We are being loosed. Y'all are being loosed. They are being loosed. Right? It's passive. Right? This ending is letting you know that the action is being done to the subject rather than the subject doing the action. And you can take those endings and slap them on other verbs and they'll function the same way. Slap them on other omega verbs, they'll function the same way. So for example, for akuo, we would have aku o mai, aku a, right? Aku etai, aku amatha, aku amatha, aku estha, and akuantai, right? And so that, notice we just slapped these endings on. Oh my, a, etai, amatha, estha, antai. How would that be translated? Right? Rather than I am hearing, it's I am being heard. You are being heard. He is being heard. We are being heard. Y'all are being heard. They are being heard. Right? So it's just turns those endings let us know that this action is now being done to the subject. Also, these endings can function to convey a middle idea. So only the context will let us know whether it's a passive or middle. You're like, well, how would the middle translation sound? Well, I'm glad you asked, right? It's present in the book. You can look in the book, but also we'll just do it quickly here. How would this sound if it were middle? Well, just some little changes here. So it would be I am loosing, right? Because it's progressive. I am loosing. It could be I am loosing myself, but more likely it's going to be like for myself, in my own interest. I am loosing for myself. You are loosing for yourself. He is loosing for himself. We are loosing for ourselves. You guys are loosing for yourselves. They are loosing for themselves, right? Because these endings, if I just give you the verb luomai and I say parse that, you're going to have to say, well, that's a present, middle, or passive indicative, first person singular. And I say, what's the translation? You say, well, I don't know, because from context, I don't know if it's middle or passive. If it were passive, it would be I am being loosed. And I say, well, what if it were middle? And you say, well, if it were middle, it's I am loosing for myself, or something like that, right? So only the context will tell you. Also, these endings that we are learning as middle passive endings are the endings that will be used for middle-only verbs. Remember, some of the verbs that you're learning in the vocabulary, their lexical form ends in omai. For example, you've learned the verb paruomai, right? Paruomai. That's the form that you learned in the lexical in the list, the vocabulary list. That's the lexical form, the dictionary form, or the verb erkomai, right? You memorize those verbs with omai on the ending. Why? Because those are middle-only verbs. These verbs only occur in the middle voice, and they will always use middle or what appear to be middle or passive endings to convey a middle idea. To English speakers, they frequently sound active, right? Erkomai, you translate as I go. And so someone says, well, that just sounds active to me. Yes, but to an ancient Greek speaker, moving somewhere, going somewhere, was a very subject-affected action. So it was the middle voice speaks of the subject acting to or for itself, in its own interest, or being very affected by the activity that's done. And so, again, we're learning to talk about those verbs like erkomai and paruomai as middle-only verbs. They're going to follow these sets of endings. So if we take the verb erkomai, right, it would be erkomai. We'll just write it out. Erkomai, erke, erkatai. I should really work on my handwriting, shouldn't I? Erkamatha, erkestha, erkantai. Right? So if you look at those endings there, we have, look at this, omai, a, atai, we have omai, a, notice the other subscript, etai, amatha, es, the antai, amatha, es, the antai, but do not be confused. This is the lexical form ends in omai, so never try to render this as passive. This is a middle-only verb. And so it's just I am going, you are going, he is going, we are going, you guys are going, they are going, right? It's a middle-only verb. All right, read the chapter, think about it, memorize, work on these paradigms, use the memory devices we give you, the songs, the stories, make up your own, and drill this down deep into your neural synapses.